Welcome back for the second panel discussion of the Greendays2020 International Conference, Rethinking Development. We encourage all attendees to take part in the discussion by typing your questions into the chat box so panelists can answer them during the Q&A sessions. Forward-looking countries are prioritizing innovation. We depend on human creativity to dream up creative ideas and empathy to identify the problems worth solving. The final factor in innovation is always the people. Our next panel is future-driven innovation. So let's hear how innovations are transforming economies, societies, and our lives. Panel moderator, Mr. Dobrivoje Lerić, who leads international cooperation at Serbia's Center for the Promotion of Science, is joining us from Zlatibor. Mr. Lerić, good afternoon and welcome to the Green Days 2020.
Good afternoon, Radica, and thanks for the invitation. I just have to slightly correct you. I'm still not on Zlatibor because actually 2020, it appeared as a year that all our plans just vanished and we have to face new challenges. Thank you so much for again being truly privileged to join Green Days. It's a lovely and wonderful initiative in this region, and I hope we can even extend it further outside our region to showcase our activities and our points here. Last year, when we gathered in Podgorica, more or less in the same time in early June, we have really some brilliant plans and showcase some policies and announced new frameworks and try to address emerging European plans and policies and structures. And of course, the focus was completely different. At the global level, actually, we were thinking really big about maybe invading space again and building new spacecrafts and trying to reach all those distant worlds and galaxies. However, after entering 2020, and its pure number, 2020 sounds really so great. Like after 2000, after 2K, after that famous millennium year, I think the expectations was highest for this one. And actually just at the very beginning, we got to receive some information from all over the world, at the beginning from Far East. And then it started to grow around. And actually because of one of the tiniest living creatures in the world, we are now constrained and we are now forced to communicate in this way and to share our new plans and new ideas which are adjusted to this new reality. And somehow we need to address this reality. So our future-driven innovation panel is, of course, now in big shadow of that. But hopefully in a couple of months or in a year or maybe two, we'll be able to create an adequate response, to create a necessary vaccine to address that, because we really have to tackle all other issues. They didn't gone, they didn't vanish, they're just still here, maybe not in the major focus, but with the beginning of this summer in Belgrade, it's really, again, quite hot across the Balkans and Southeast Europe as well. So it reminds us of really some triggering issues that will face us very soon. So I'm really now have this privilege to discuss this novel innovation mindset with some relevant speakers which are coming from more or less different, diverse backgrounds, but actually sharing same visions, sharing many same practices. And when I try to reanalyze and prepare myself for this session, I found out actually that already they had some collaborations. So I would like now just to briefly introduce all of them, to announce the structure of our session, and also just to keep our time up. That's why, because I'm sitting just in front of my clock here behind to remind us that we have to structure and keep ourselves in this timeline. So first of all, the very Minister of Science of Montenegro, Madam Sanja Damjanović. Dr. Sanja Damjanović is joining us from Geneva, from Switzerland, from CERN facilities, where she spent, I think, the most of her research career. Sanja, welcome, if I may say so, for the event organized by the Ministry of Science.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really a joy to participate in this session.
Yeah, thank you. On the other side, actually, now long-time UK representative, Her Excellence Alison Kemp is joining us from Podgorica. She is ambassador of British Crown and Queen representative since 2017, if I am correct. Welcome, Alison, as well.
Thank you very much, Lali. It's great to be here. I really enjoyed Green Days last year, and it's wonderful we've been able to reproduce this online.
Okay, thank you, Alison. From Croatia, from the town of Sisak, if I am correct, Mr. Viktor Simončić is here. He's an independent environmentalist with decades in this area, and he will also share with us his precious achievements and findings so far. Welcome, Viktor, as well.
I'm honored to be again in this conference, and I hope that I will contribute as you have expected.
Thank you for that. And finally, not that far, for me, not that far as I expected, here in Belgrade, also Professor Dr. Ana Trbović. She is a member of the governing body of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, but also a professor at the Zengezurem University and a teacher of entrepreneurship and economy. Truly a mixture of knowledge and practices, which I believe we need in this time in order to properly address all those novel issues, but also those old ones as well. Anna, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Anna is inviting as a member of an innovation institute, which is really getting prominence and which work we may identify even in this part of Europe. And now when Horizon 2020 is coming to its close shortly, and its first announcement of following Horizon Europe program, actually the focus will be put, the biggest emphasis is going directly into how to transfer research, science, and knowledge in general into innovation. And together with the recently piloting, but soon to become an institution, European Innovation Council, actually those two institutions will be leading our continent's responses in many ways. So Anna, can you please introduce us to all this new story? And
yes, I would be happy to do that. So I'm an entrepreneur in Berlin now. I have a team of 20 people from 16 countries, and we're almost at parity of men and women. So a very diverse and highly talented team in cutting edge innovation. And I come to Belgrade to teach a class on entrepreneurship at FEFA. So I keep my link with Serbia, as well as with some leading NGOs like Intersection that promote research and innovation. I also had the pleasure to meet Minister Damjanović, and I feel that Montenegro is lucky to have an expert at the helm, especially in this situation. So I have been asked to share a presentation, so I'd like your team to now share the screen. And the main topic, the future-driven innovation is really, my role here is to approach what EIT does. EIT is the European Institute for Technology and Innovation. It is really the backbone of innovation in Europe. And EIT is established on a firm basis of a knowledge triangle, which is research plus education plus business, absolutely, with also a policy role there as well. And we have created a significant ecosystem across Europe. I had first wanted to talk to you about the Green Deal, but I am very fortunate to follow a fantastic presentation by Janez Potočnik. So I can go straight into, if we can move on, please, to the next slide and the one after. Yes, so I can go straight into presenting. I hope everyone can see the entire screen of the EIT. These are just some of the figures. but what is really striking about EIT is the number of partnerships. Really, the leading companies in Europe partnering with the leading research institutions and universities to create niche programs, education programs, and to accelerate innovations both for startups and for scale-ups. In this specific situation of COVID-19, what the EIT did was to accelerate the granting of funds that it has for innovative companies. And just for you to understand the magnitude of support, we give about between 400 and 500 million euros each year to support different innovation activities, be it through education or direct acceleration, business creation in Europe. So we have accelerated that disbursement of funds this year, and we also had a special call and have just given out 60 million euros to companies focusing in part on solutions to treat COVID, but in a much greater part just on innovative solutions that we knew would otherwise be suffering because of the current economic situation and because Europe really has put innovation first. And the Green Deal and the post-COVID recovery, as emphasized by people who spoke in the morning of this conference, has really shaped the future of support given out through different EU institutions to be one of green recovery and green growth and green innovation. So that is certainly an emphasis in the future EU programming across the board, more than it has ever been before. So that certainly has been reinforced with the current pandemic. And on the next slide, I just gave a few examples of different innovation communities that we have at EIT. So EIT is structured based on societal challenges. And then in those areas, we have different consortia of businesses and research institutions, educational institutions who work together to stimulate innovative activity. So a focus, we definitely have a focus on clean energy, on circular economy, sustainable e-mobility, and food systems that are sustainable. And the societal challenges that are defined are very much also linked to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. So there is a firm mission there towards green sustainability. And as I know that there are students that are attending this conference, and I always have a particular weakness for students, the next slide is showcasing some of the programs that we have that could interest them. So, for example, there is the Journey, which is a very large summer school that looks at climate change and solutions to face that challenge and grapple with it with different business ideas. And then there is a raw materials school, because another area that EIT has looked at is exactly how to add that piece of the puzzle of the circular economy, where we actually didn't have as much innovation in Europe recently. And then, of course, we have a focus on energy and food and making climate entrepreneurs. And all of those programs are accessible to everybody from the region of Western Balkans. And they can apply for these programs. They just have to follow the calls of different EIT consortia, be it EIT Climate or EIT Energy or others. And as this conference also has a focus on future technologies, I would like to emphasize that EIT is technology agnostic, but there are certainly a sufficient number of courses that tackle with new technologies like artificial intelligence, like blockchain, like 3D printing, or whatever it is that could help respond to these societal challenges with business innovation. But the focus is certainly on business creation. EIT is not an organization that supports an NGO activity per se or a movement. It's an institution that supports business creation that responds to the societal challenges, and I'd like to emphasize that. And on the next slide, we have some of the competitions that are launched to identify solutions that are interesting, created by startups, created by other companies. And we have had that competition organized for this region as well. For example, the Power Up Energy competition is focused on Central East Europe alone. So to ensure that we harness the potential from that part of Europe as well, and not just from North and West of Europe, which currently dominates in terms of innovation activity coming out of Europe. So EIT also has this regional innovation scheme and an emphasis to have innovation that come from different parts of Europe. It also ensures to engage youth and gender diversity as well. And all of those cross-cutting goals are part of different programming activities of different knowledge innovation communities at the EIT. We can move to the next slide. Here I have given you examples of some of the companies that came out of different EIT programs. And I can maybe pick one, which is Northvolt, which will help Europe become more independent in terms of battery production and sustainable battery production. And in these times when we see supply chains being interrupted, those initiatives become particularly important. And as this presentation will be available for everybody afterwards, I encourage you to look up these companies online and see what they're doing and get inspired. And some of those innovations may seem to be highly sophisticated or, compared to the resources that we may have in the region of Western Balkans, but some you will see are not. And they just require a very good team of engineers and business skills together to come up with a solution. And then, they can use a network like the one provided by EIT to then seek support and funding going forward. So while we're certainly at a different stage of development, I believe that EIT could be a very useful accelerator in many ways for innovation coming from our region. On the next page, I have provided you with hubs that we see now starting in the Western Balkans. And the reason why EIT is supporting these innovation hubs is so that the companies from the region could have someone to contact other than, a more abstract website out there. For example, the organization with which two consortia work, one in energy and one in food, is started from Belgrade, which is essentially an NGO initially supported by innovative companies. So it's not always an official institution, it's just someone that they select through a competition that they believe could help promote their activities in the region. And these are the ones that we have at the moment. We have one in Croatia, the rest are in Serbia. But we also have many partners, so 19 partner organizations that participate directly in many of these programming activities. But overall, I would say that we need more activity coming from our region. And this has also been my personal mission as a governing board member. And that is a peculiarity of EIT, which is that, even though I come from a country that is not an EU member, I am part of a board that decides on significant funding that is provided by EU taxpayers. And everybody else on the board has been very supportive of the mission to intensify activities in those parts of Europe where we currently have a low level of activity, which is why we now have these new hubs also starting in the Western Balkans.
Lale, she's having problems. Anna is having problems with her internet connection. So until we have Anna back, please continue with the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to cope with those issues nowadays quite actively. Well, Anna actually gave really interesting introduction to an institute which is actually undertaking so many inspiring and necessary activities. And she also mentioned relations between different actors, between different type of and group of stakeholders, like those coming from the policy sector, of course, crossing with education and research community, trying to integrate as much out of economy representatives as we can, trying to inspire new businesses and to establish new startups. But there is also one segment of the community that is always lacking in order to comply to this known framework as quadruple helix, meaning that we are bringing together all actors and trying to address specific needs, specific tasks. And in some areas of Europe, of world, of course, those attempts are quite successful. Unfortunately, in our region, we are still learning on some good practices and trying to apply it in our own contexts. So now I would like to announce Madam Kemp, representing UK here. She did really a fantastic diplomatic service practically all over the world. So you are a kind of diplomatic globetrotter. You've been into Mid East and Near East and in North African countries, Arabic Peninsula, Mediterranean, South Europe. Now you are for a couple of years here in Southeast Europe, in Montenegro. However, UK is of course leading still the globe, although being outside EU for a while now, but still you are leaders in so many areas, and your examples could guide us through challenges nowadays. Can you please maybe try to introduce us to your perspective? You choose to speak about the impact of this new crisis of the COVID on our societies nowadays, but of course emphasizing the impact on economies and on climate actions, which are clearly lacking at the moment due to pandemic. Also to need for this kind of continued reform and support to innovation, even in these struggling times. So Madam Kemp, can you please proceed?
Thanks very much, Lale. So yeah, I mean, I think so much of what we are facing at the moment is around an expedited and accelerated pace of transformation that's been going on for several decades. I mean, this is one of the most exciting times there's been in the history of science, enterprise, and commerce. And what we as government and policymakers need to be doing is creating strategies which capitalize on the opportunities ahead of us and seek to address our weaknesses. And as you said, any conversation that we're having about the pace of change today must refer to the two of the key disruptors that we're experiencing at the moment, COVID-19 and climate change. So COVID-19 is likely to accelerate, as I say, existing change in several areas, but also challenge it in others. It's likely to change the individual's relationship with the state forever. Where social distancing and lockdown policies are enforced, for most part, populations will accept enhanced social and business regulation for the greater good. But how those regulations are formed is incredibly important. But however, as public frustration builds, levels of trust with the political leadership may also vary and come under strain. Inequality within countries and between countries will increase, and community solidarity will come under severe strain. For example, as the gig economy suffers, small businesses go under, and the grey and the black economies grow. The workplace will fundamentally change. And I mean, this is something we can see from this conference today. Businesses and workers will become increasingly used to social distancing measures and reliant on the flexibility provided by technology. If harnessed in the right way, this can have a major impact on gender dynamics and offer opportunities to improve productivity. But it will also sharpen urban-rural divides where access and connectivity are uneven. Of course, travel will change. International travel will be affected by quarantine, distancing requirements, and economic recession. Online collaboration will become the standard, everything from academics to the G20 and the G7. We've got a panel tomorrow on the future of tourism. Tourism, culture, and the creative sectors will be crippled in the short term, with uncertainty over long-term visitor numbers and forcing the sector to innovate. There will be the move to digital across cultural and creative sectors will increase both in volume and in pace. There'll be a knock-on and parallel effect on trade. Trade will be more constrained. Demands for goods and services will take many years to return to pre-pandemic levels, and future trade deals will be affected as governments look to demonstrate national economic leadership and self-sufficiency. Supply chains and just-in-time manufacturing models will be overhauled as countries and businesses opt for greater insurance against future global disruption. We're already seeing an increased emphasis on safeguarding complex supply routes, including food security. What we're already seeing is that developed economies may be better able to weather the storm thanks to the greater resources and their more effective welfare systems. The economic impacts will be deeper for emerging economies, which lack these economic levers and access to capital. So you're going to see nations investing heavily in medical R&D with an emphasis on global health security and strengthening the pandemic response. Even as the collaboration on science and health are increasingly valued, the effect on travel, working in isolation, all of this will complicate intellectual capital flows. So really the world needs to work together to come up with a creative approach to scholarships, academia and academic collaboration. Where we're talking about technology and apps, government mandated apps will underpin the fight against the virus, but will prompt concerns about privacy and bring governments and tech into direct competition over citizens' information. COVID-19 presents an opportunity to change people's views on sharing data and generate greater consent, and thus accelerating the applicability of blockchain. However, more authoritative and illiberal leaders will use emerging tech solutions to tighten their grip. There will likely be greater risk-taking in adopting new technology with potentially unforeseen consequences. But one of those consequences will be around cybersecurity and the increased importance of that. So the standards that we set now are going to be incredibly important in how the shape of innovation emerges in the coming decades. At the same time, we've been aware for quite some time of the tremendous and existential challenge that climate change faces, and increasingly the dialogue that we are facing a climate crisis. So the UK is going to be chairing COP26. It was supposed to be this November, it's now postponed to next November. We believe that there'll be a huge opportunity not just to rebuild, but to respond to the UN Secretary General's call to build back better. We are clear that a global recovery must be based on solid foundations, including a fairer, greener, and more resilient global economy. So that's the challenge we face. What are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? 200 years ago, people couldn't have predicted the fuel cell car. And I'm sure if you asked someone involved in transport 200 years ago, they would have thought they'd almost reached the apex of horseshoe design and efficiency. So the future will always surprise us. But if we have a vision drawing on sound analysis, hopefully we won't be blindsided by it. And one of the key things, I think, from my time here in the region and looking at the way that the region has moved over the last decade or so, is Euro-Atlantic integration, and as Anna's presentation mentioned, the opportunities for collaboration across Europe with the Western Balkans. So in Zagreb, they hosted both more online than physically on the 6th of May, the EU Western Balkans Summit. And the EU countries and the countries in the region reiterated their very strong commitment to the European perspective. Together, European and regional leaders committed to an economic and social recovery from COVID-19, and they stressed the need to transform functioning market economies, improve business and investment climates, and promote a green agenda, as well as furthering the digital economy and strengthening all aspects of connectivity. So that's a pretty kind of impressive vision, and one that, as you say, Deputy Prime Minister Simović earlier today was very keen to stress that Montenegro wanted to play a full and active part in. In terms of implementing that will require policies and reforms to underpin it. I know we had a very interesting panel just now about the circular economy. I was reading over the weekend about Kate Raworth from Oxford University, her donut model, which visualizes the circular economy underpinned by sustainable, underpinned by the social aims of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that is a really important reminder that for innovation to flourish, society must flourish, and the government reforms to promote wider social goods are key enablers for innovation and reform. I think the Minister is going to go on to talk about the Smart Specialisation Strategy, which I attended the launch of and was incredibly exciting to see the way that Montenegro had really kind of sought to focus down on the key areas that it should be seeking to develop a competitive advantage over. The Montenegrin government has also committed to developing a digital strategy this year, and this is a regular theme of their discussions with the private sector and with foreign investors. And I'm very keen for the UK to support this work. I think the main way that the UK is doing this is through committing to building opportunities for education and building opportunities around the digital future of youth in the Western Balkans. We're making the largest ever investment in education, the largest ever investment in young people in the Western Balkans through a £10 million British Council programme called 21st Century Schools. That is training teachers and developing a curriculum which involves critical thinking, problem solving, coding and creativity into every primary school in the Western Balkans. And I'm delighted that in Montenegro, the government has really picked this up and embraced it enthusiastically. And I think later this week, there's going to be a very exciting announcement from the government of Montenegro about the ways they're going to scale this up to ensure this program has even greater impact in Montenegro. We're also keen to work at the local level. So the British Council from 2018 has developed partnerships with cities across the Western Balkans through their Digital Cities program. We expanded this here in Montenegro in 2019 to help the capital city of Podgorica develop a roadmap for how it would develop its own digital strategy. And that involved consultation with policymakers, the private sector, civil society, and young people. And then building on that, at the start of 2020, the UK published an assessment by DAI of the digital environment across the Western Balkans, support available, and recommendations to address barriers. So I think that's a very useful engagement point for us to continue our discussions with the government of Montenegro. The British Council and the University of Manchester have also provided advice to the Montenegrin government on how they can develop innovation centres for students. And I was really pleased to see last week the government of Montenegro open the innovation centre in Podgorica. So you've got vision, you've got a process of reform. But as the world seeks to build back better, we must be inclusive, not prescriptive. In the developed world, the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on some minority groups, together with the profound conversations now underway as a result of the Black Lives Matter, need to address long-standing inequities across wealth, race, ethnicity, and religion. Human rights champions in the international community, including the UN, have a key role to play in addressing these inequalities and promoting these conversations. Governments also have a responsibility to minimize and address the digital divide, because it's no good countries moving towards digitalization if they're leaving some of their most vulnerable groups behind. And here in Montenegro, and in the UK as well, that includes more rural, poorer and older members of our communities. Something we've seen communities across the world struggling with, even with accessing services, digital services during coronavirus. So governments can establish institutions, formulate policies, and consult and listen. But they need to have the engagement of innovators, job creators, local leaders, trade unions, workers, and consumers. We must all work together to make a success of the future. It's not all down to the government. And I think that was brought home to me very forcibly last week in a conversation I was having with one of Minister Damjanovic's colleagues. We were talking about the recently passed Montenegrin budget, where there's 10 million euros of loans available for SMEs at very favourable rates. So the minister said to me, you know, the government has now put together the structures and the funds to support innovation, but now what we need are the ideas. So the market is open in Montenegro for innovation, and I'm very pleased that I've been able to witness that growth over the last couple of years. So just to reiterate, I think my key point is, you know, as the future rushes towards us, we need to develop a shared vision. The governments need to focus and on their priority reforms across to build an environment which enables innovation, and when there needs to be an inclusive discussion about how to deliver innovation. Thank you.
Many thanks, Alison, for your inspiring and well, let's say different approach to our context, because, you know, we are all belonging to this same community, same region, and it's, I think, very relevant when someone else is sharing his or her insight with us. It is allowing us actually to see us by different eyes and different perspectives. You mentioned many valuable points. I would just like to reflect. You said that clearly we witnessed actually the largest annual drop in global CO2 emission this year. But what it says about us, if because of global pandemic and global shutdown and because of one micro creature, we are actually destroying our communities, but at the same time, actually, our nature is blossoming again.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for me, the dilemma is this has not been a positive choice that mankind has made, that the world has made to reduce emissions. It's one that's been forced upon us. And the consequence of that is that governments now have to make decisions which will affect the emissions levels for decades to come. I mean, I think that so far, the global economic response to COVID amounts to over 9 trillion euros. And, you know, every government, every regional development bank has made money available, but we need to be very careful to ensure that we don't exacerbate a climate crisis in the way that we spend that, and be very mindful of the fact that that money is for global economic recovery. So what is the best way of creating sustainable jobs? And I think there's some really interesting information from the Institute, the International Renewable Energy Association, that suggests that for every dollar or euro that a government spends on investing in renewables, energy, and sustainable technologies, they will get €4 back, fourfold back. And it's understanding how that works in each individual context. I think, as Victor said, as we were talking before this presentation, reflecting on earlier discussions in the morning, context is everything. The local context is everything. How do you make the right choices to guarantee green growth and sustainable growth going forward?
We are unfortunately again reassured that we can't predict our future, but maybe try to focus to predict our own behavior and how we will cope with the world which is surrounding us. Therefore, actually, we are going quite away from our region to the middle of Geneva's famous scientific and research facility, one of the largest in the world, actually, where some of those answers hopefully we will find, and we are finding clearly. Madam Sanja Damjanović is working there for a while. She spent most of her research career as a trained physicist there, and she contributed to many famous discoveries which were done in the recently at the CERN. At the same time, since 2016, Madam Damjanović is leading Montenegro's Ministry of Science and trying actually to combine all those values, those coming from policy as a key actor and those coming from research, which is creating our knowledge and helping us to better shape our future education and our coming generations. In your presentation, you will focus on two major policies, political European and global concepts, and those are United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Smart Specialization Strategy, which was formally accepted by government of Montenegro at the end of 2019 as the first country outside of European Union who did so. So please, can you proceed with your presentation?
Yeah, thank you very much and good afternoon to everybody. I need to say that it's really my pleasure to participate in this event, and I would like to thank organizer for giving me the chance. Last year I missed the conference because I was at CERN, but you see, advantage to have online conference is that I can participate now from CERN. And I need to say that I'm also happy that after 3 months I could travel again, and also, as you said, it's really challenging, but I must admit that I enjoy to be Minister of Science and at the same time scientist. So as you mentioned, I would like a little bit to strengthen the importance of smart specialization strategy for transformation for sustainable development, but also to emphasize importance of this strategy for Montenegro and to tell you that we are not only thinking about to go in direction of sustainable development, but we are also already starting to act in that way. So we already had many fantastic presentations and speakers, and I also enjoy in Anna's presentation, and its aid is doing incredible things. And also Alison, who is always behind us and support of UNDP and this international thinking. I just want to emphasize something which we all know, that we are living in the best world ever, but our world is not sustainable. We are facing many challenges: climate change, environmental challenges, pollution, and this comes more from economically developed countries than from from less developed countries. And then we have challenges with health, food, energy, and what we are doing. We see we have the greatest world, but our world is economically, socially, and politically extreme vulnerable. And therefore, sorry, I have a problem to go to the next. Okay, fine. So therefore, we are really very grateful to UN to adopt the Agenda 2030 with well-defined 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we are very grateful to European Commission to set up really roadmap for making our economies sustainable. Now, if we talk about sustainable development, what this really means? This means, we heard already, transforming our world. Now the question is how we can transform our world. What are these main instruments? And main instruments for transformation are science and innovation, because fast changing, interdependent, and global are all science generated since our civilization exists. And successfully facing most current challenges require science, innovation, out-of-box thinking, and action. But now, how to use these tools? We cannot only use science. And so how to use that in the best way? The best way is actually to use smart specialization strategy, which I heard recently from Nakicenović, who is also involved, Nebojša Nakicenović, professor from Austria, who defines smart specialization strategy, actually SDG goal number 18. And so I'm proud to tell you that Montenegro adopted smart specialization strategy. Actually, we work hard, and we're working 2 years to adopt this strategy. And you see, being small, Montenegro is one of the smallest countries in Europe, but being small is sometimes advantage. And that was advantage in our case because because we managed to get 400 people working on this strategy. So 50% was from business sector. We made a really great synergy between the government, between academic sector, business sector, and civil sector. And this is why we were really fast. And this strategy was approved by European Commission at the end of 2019. Now, if you look, what is the road which Montenegro traced, and how really to use, actually, we are not inventing something new. Actually, we had these strong traditional economical sections, but now we want to make them smarter. And you see, this is our trace, our way to go. It's strategic priorities are sustainable agriculture and food value chain, energy and sustainable environment, sustainable and health tourism, and then we have ICT sector as a horizontal platform. But and all of these, our strategic priorities are very, very well in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. So probably you saw these slides, and there are a group of people thinking about how to implement SDG goals in the most efficient way. And they define here these 6 transformations. And our smart specialization strategy is actually in line. Again, I want to strengthen with all of this transformation. And we are also proud, if you look here in the bottom, people who were working on that among them is, actually I mentioned him, Professor Nebojša Damjanović, who is actually a member of our new established Council for Innovation and Smart Specialization. Now, if you come to the energy, to the first strategic priorities, look at here. Montenegro is becoming regional green energy hub. So it is it is already has a strong potential for renewable energy, but also has already high level of use of renewable energy. You see, we are not only thinking that direction, we are working in that direction. And I need here to point out incredible great projects, leading renewable energy projects in Montenegro. There is a submarine electric cable investment of more than 1 billion euros. It's you see the length is more than 400 kilometers between Montenegro and Italy. And this project just started to operate. And here, Montenegro is building the largest solar power plant in the region, 250 megawatts. Many wind power plants are already being built, and many are going to be used. And I want just to emphasize that if you talk about fossil fuel, so we are left with 100 years to use it. And now the question is, are we going to burn it till the end? Now, if you think about renewable energy, the question is, does really Europe has enough renewable energy to live after the all fossil fuel is burned? And so you can see here in our region of Southeast Europe has a strong potential for renewable energy. And I would like always to think in this direction, because it's the situation with Western Balkan, you know very much that we are somehow behind. We are not integrated in Europe. But I would like to see Europe integrated, because we are really adding value to it. On top of that, in the future, we need to think about not anymore how to produce energy, but also how to transfer this energy. And I'm really proud to say that even people here at CERN who have strong knowledge in superconducting are thinking about superconducting cables, how to transfer energy from this big potential which exists of renewable energy from Africa to Europe. So I want to just emphasize, we really need all to think globally and not locally. And I think now feeling here that it's a lot of local also doubts or maybe on our region of Southeast Europe. Now, if you go to a second priority, this is it's a sustainable agriculture. So in Montenegro, organic and autochthonous food is on the top of innovation goals. And we have a nice example and very good success story already. This is Plantage, which is recognized as a regional leader in autochthonous wine production. And a lot of things are on our now, what Alison mentioned, we are now making list of many, many projects which we want to strengthen all these economical sectors, but in this direction, in innovative and sustainable. And now the third priority is sustainable tourism and health tourism. And I want just to emphasize that Montenegro is regional medical wellness, and call it beauty of aging. We have also a great example, flagship project, which is Institute Sima Milošević. And not only that we have project, we have capacity, human capacity. Imagine we have more physiotherapists, professionals per capita than Germany. So I just want to say again, we have well-traced road, we have capacity, it's no doubts on that, but we really need long hands, everybody to think globally. And now I cannot avoid to show you inspiration. And this is the project which initiated by Montenegro for the region of Southeast Europe with 40 million inhabitants, so-called SEAS project, which is fully in line with SDG goals because we are talking about health, and which is fully aligned with EU policy because we are trying to fight cancer. And here, it is amazing what we managed. And this is exactly what international really means. We really managed to make strong pan-European dimension. We really attract 18 European centers from 14 countries to build the new technology break in medical accelerator to really provide something which is added value, not only for Southeast Europe, but which will be added value for the full Europe. And here we are talking about comprehensive center which will be 50% time dedicated to cancer research, which is one of the 5 missions of the new Horizon Europe program, and which will be 50% of time be used to treat patients from Southeast Europe. But on top of that, it will have open access. It will be Institute International for everybody. And I want to emphasize here, and why I show that while we are now building breakthrough in technology and getting back Europe leading position in this field, because Europe lost it, because presently there are only 12 machines of such type, only 4 in Europe and 6 are in Japan. So we are also thinking about green concept for our project. And this will be the first green particle therapy infrastructure, because operational costs of energy will be used from green energy. And on top of that, we are also building so-called digital hub, but it will be green IT hub. And we are building that with people who are creator of the first green supercomputer. So I now need to make some some challenges. And what are our challenges? Is priority investments, regulatory barriers, habits, business as usual attitude, which we need to remove it, financial crisis, they are not reason for no change. And I will also pray again, we need Europe integral. And I'm really looking forward to see Western Balkan part of Europe. And changes and developments are now our future. I thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Madam Damjanović. It was really inspiring, totally. And I can see now what is moving you so much at CERN and, of course, across the region. I have to admit and share with you one quite personal remark. Working at the Center for the Promotion of Science for a decade now, I was able to visit and spend some time at CERN as well. And once I actually stayed there for 5 days, and at the entrance I got this map of CERN, which should direct me towards this huge facility. And if you will have another opportunity to see my walls, actually I put it in a frame and keeping it here because it was so astonishing and so strong. And now I can see that you're trying actually to apply this very same approach and those shared dreams, shared visions at our regional context. But I will keep that question for a little later. At this very same time, one of the projects where our center is involved, called the Ring, is trying to establish national chapters across the globe, which are trying to address SDGs and to connect it with European responsible research and innovation policy, which was very relevant in the context of Horizon 2020, in order actually to create a global policy under UNESCO's recommendation on science and scientific researchers. And if I am correct, that was the first attempt of a really global endeavor, which was accepted by 195 countries across the globe. And I think that we really have to rely and follow those precious examples. So many thanks for all those informations. And a little bit later, I hope we'll hear much more about the institute you are trying to create in our own region. And now, going a bit closer to our region, to Croatia, I would like to announce Dr. Viktor Simončić, who was really working since the time of old Yugoslavia on these environmental policies and issues, both in that old country and later on in Slovenia and in Croatia as well. And he was a consultant and really a precious contributor to so many approaches and the policies that were created across Southeast Europe. And although we just had before us a session which was fully dedicated to circular economy, which was highlighting mainly the benefits and some maybe good examples, Victor's presentation and Victor's approach is a little bit different, because I believe he has such a deep knowledge that actually he can inform us about our realities. And sometimes it's not necessary only to dream big, but also to rely on our own actually background, on those things that we have in our own local settings. So his presentation, is under title Circular Economy, a unique concept or something else. And now I would like to announce, Victor, please proceed with your presentation. Very glad to have you here with us.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. You can proceed. Yeah.
You can share. Oh, that's fine. Thank you. I am very privileged to have the opportunity to have here my short presentation. Unfortunately, during the presentation for Mrs. Damjanović, I was disconnected, and I hope this will not happen once again. Please, first slide. Transition from linear to circular economy is nothing new. The best examples are small rural households, especially in poor areas. There, everything is used and there is almost no waste. In my opinion, circular economy is revolution only for wasteful consumer society, which developed on cheap energy and raw materials. And I'm afraid if this will be even so actual issue, if we not face with the climate changes and with the fact that we cannot solve these problems alone, we need to solve these problems together. If you are looking at the schematic presentation of circular economy as well sustainable development, that is very simple and very simple issue. There are some circles, overlapping circles, and everything could be solved on this way. In the practice, it is most complicated, and this is as well circular economy as sustainability as a part, as circular economy is only a part of sustainability, are more complex and presents a forest of interconnected dependencies. Next slide, please. I will try to present the complexity of circular economy connected with classic municipal waste management. If you are looking on the left side, this picture, you will see that for treatment of municipal waste, we need huge number of waste facilities, smart legislation, and excellent management. Such a wide range of facilities and processing industry only exist in a handful of the most developed countries. Additional to this, we need processing industry. And this processing industry for the raw materials must be on a reasonable distance, so that transport does not take away the environmental benefit of processing. Just for example, everyone knows for Dubrovnik, if we collect waste paper and cardboard in Dubrovnik to the closest paper factory, we need to transport this good 800 kilometers. And then it's not too complicated to calculate to show how this is not environmental friendly. So we need something. On the right side, there are the number of waste management infrastructure, the plants, waste management infrastructure in Germany. And you can see there are hundreds and thousands of these type of plants. In Germany, we have the population of 80 million. In Montenegro, almost 100 times less. Just divide this 160 and something waste incineration plant with 100, and you will see that in Montenegro, we will need at least one and a half waste incineration plant. We will need at least 7 or something waste to energy plants. We will need 24 or even more biological treatment plant, and so on. Do we have it? But to be on the circular economy track, we need at least some of these plans. So far, Croatia is concerned, we don't have these plans, at least not in this number, and there are only a few ones. Please, the next slide. What is, in my opinion, also very important, that we are always taking all these big stories, big paradigms, sustainability, now circular economy, environment-friendly development, and so on, independently from the local states. Look at how is the nominal income per capita was in 2017. I was too lazy to translate that in euro, and I apologize myself for this. If you are looking the Luxembourg on the top, then you have the Montenegro that is at least 5, 6, 7 times they have less of GDP. But additional to this, in European Union, the differences between the regions in European Union are over factor 30. But even in each country, you have also differences. And I'm sure that the difference from Podgorica on maybe Rožaje on something is also factor 10, 15 or something. But if we are speaking about the circular economy, I carefully followed the first session. Everyone is speaking about very advanced, very smart issues and so on. And if you are going to translate and to try to implement the European environmental policy, they will always ask you to have the same standard as the rich one. But the same standard has the same cost. So if you ask, let us take it, this waste taxes per household per month is at least 20 euro. In Europe, 20 up to 30 euro per month. If you would like to have the same standard as someone in Denmark, then you need to spend same money for this issue. That could not be cheaper. The track is not cheaper, the pump is not cheaper, the energy is not cheaper. And in Luxembourg, someone is spending for these services really peanuts. In Montenegro, not. In Montenegro, the same standard as in Luxembourg or in Germany or Swiss, we request up to 5% of household income. Are we prepared? Is this realistic to spend 5% of income for waste management? And then 5% or 10% for even for water management and so on. I don't believe that it's realistic. And then this is an average for Montenegro of 4.5%. Definitely that is less in Podgorica, but much more, as example, in Rožaje. Rožaje is one municipality in north of Montenegro. I'm also working now also in Montenegro, so that I am relatively familiar with the situation in Montenegro. Please, next slide. What we will need, in my opinion, we need to take not only paradigm circular economy as universal and unified solution in large margin, but also all other environmental policies. And everything what is based I'm now make the relation to the European Union, we always speaking about the equality. And only what is changed in this, that you will have 5, 10 or 15 years more to fulfill something, but you need to fulfill the same as the others. In my opinion, that is also one message for research. Circular economy is excellent promoter for research, but must be tailored to local conditions, local circumstances. But this local mean Montenegro, but this local mean also Podgorica, Rožaje, or Budva. If not, the circular economy paradigm based only on copy-paste could be serious disadvantage as well for particular national and local economy as for citizens. And with each action, even I would ask the high officials from European Union, if someone is going to propose one measure or investment or something, the question must be asked about the impact of this measure on national, in this case Montenegro, and local, Rožaje, Podgorica, Budva, GDP. And also to answer who will pay and whether it can pay. We need very strong message about the affordability. If we don't have this affordability first, then all these measures are definitely disadvantage for national and local economy. I can bring a lot of these type of examples with failure of investment from European the money in different environmental infrastructure. And my proposal, definitely we will need great wisdom to ensure equity, not only to insist on equality. That is not easy. But I have one idea. I am expressing this, I believe, a second time. Maybe we should, having in mind all this circular economy problem with the environment, to finance an environmental infrastructure according to the NATO principle. In NATO, each country should allocate 2% of GDP. Why we should not propose the same approach for environmental issue? Because environmental issue is common issue, that is not only national issue, to propose the same issue. My proposal, rich should respect and poor countries shall insist that the principle of equity will be enforced. And then that's need changes in the existing policies, in the existing Green Deal from European Union, and all other documents we heard on the beginning. And please, the last slide. No, that is not last slide. Sorry, that is not last. Here is only give me the slide before. It's very important message. Here you have very important message. I will go very short. You have here the example of circular economy from how it is fulfilled from several developed EU countries. In middle of 2017, China stopped import of plastic waste from Europe. Up to this time, from Europe, it was exported 300,000 tons of plastic waste per month. After that, that was stopped, and now only 150,000 tons would exported, not more to China, but to the other countries. In my opinion, that is also a very important message. And then now the last slide, please. Why I can say a little bit afraid. Why I'm call for caution. Why do I have a little skepticism for circular economy? I'm afraid that circular economy could be just another one of the ineffective policies if we will insist on equality. Namely, you remember the very famous UN conference on environment held in Stockholm 1972. In this time, we have used less environment and it was disposal for us. From this time after, we have organized dozens of conferences, we have dozens of different conventions, and today, European Union is using their environment until May, and the world until August. And if we will insist on equity instead equality, I am afraid circular economy will not succeed. But definitely we have a lot of possibilities for even to involve the scientific society and to work on local applied researches. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Victor. That was really tremendous presentation, and you offer such a brilliant insight into this even global trends. You've been pioneering this work in our region for decades, so your overview is really unique perspective, and we should carefully analyze and discuss about that. You mentioned some rising inequalities, and it is clearly one of the major topics of our discussion today. But when we are trying to apply, and also this dichotomy, equality versus equity, when we are trying it to apply to our regional context, to our research and innovation environments, startups and innovative hubs and all those ecology which is emerging also in our context. Do you have any valuable examples which you may share now with us, which will prove some of the perspectives that are positive in our context, not only to be maybe skeptic about the global trends, which are quite clear, but also maybe to showcase something on the other side?
I'm not skeptic. I'm just, maybe that this impression is that I'm skeptic. I'm not skeptic. I would just like to move. I would just like to move us in different direction. Only one example. The European Union is speaking, we will be neutral. See, we will be neutral. We will not insist on benzene and so on. How this name? I have forgotten.
Fossil free.
Fossil free. Oh, thank you. Fossil free is not English, but my English is not the best. But fossil, I know what fossil free. We insist to be fossil free, and we would like to be CO2 neutral. We will invest billions of billions to be, as Europa, civil neutral, but we will reduce the CO2 production only for 10%. It's maybe not smarter to invest this money worldwide and to reduce that for 30, 40%. But what a good example we have now, and I'm very, very lucky that the lady minister is also here. Even in Montenegro, we have excellent example. In Plantage, that was the problem to bring the wastewater or technological water to the now central wastewater treatment plant in Podgorica. I'm working with them, but not only because I am there, but we have discussed what to do it. Now we will be one of the first, or the Weinland Plantage will be one of the first goods. They will reuse this technological water for irrigation. But even from the foreign consultant, they have proposed bring that on our wastewater treatment. So they are good examples, but you always need to go back to see how I have the problem. How will I solve the problem? Not immediately to go to Stockholm, Dublin, or Madrid. Just to try to solve this, because we have very limited material resources. We have when I'm speaking on the border of ex-Yugoslavia. We have also relatively limited technological now capacity, even human capacity. We have excellent scientists, but I'm not sure we have enough the scientists that are working on the applied research. But we need to propose this. And secondly, that is one message to the European Union in the environmental infrastructure. If we would like to build one wastewater or solid waste treatment plant, you need to build this plant according some references in European Union. You cannot say, no, apply, I have my idea, my technology is better, and I know these technologies, they are better. Because they will, no, we will not give you the money. You need to build the same plant as there was 3, 4, or 5 already built in the European Union. Let's remember be on the China music. In China, so I heard that each other lead must be similar as lead before. And it seems that is something that stopped research and stopped applied research in some infrastructure. This is easier in the industry. In the industry, it's much more easier, and you can the people in the industry can understand. But in the public investment, that everything will be enforced by high EU bureaucracy. I have experienced this regard, and even I wrote also to previous environmental minister of EU, Mr. Potočnik, to ask him to help to avoid some misinvestments. But this investment we already have now in Croatia, and now it's too late.
Okay, thanks for that as well. I would also like to suggest to our panelists and our other guests to check your blog that you're actually keeping weekly on the Zagreb magazine, zgmagazine.com, where actually you are sharing your insights and ideas, and also maybe for future reading your interesting book titled The Society of Reduced Value or Diminished Value, where you collected all your ideas and practices. Thank you. We will return a little bit later to those other issues as well. Now we are going back towards our own representative of one major global player, which is clearly we are facing many challenges in Southeast Europe. Unfortunately, some of those challenges are not limited to our region. And now UK is also under strong influence of those constrained months, and this is influencing your economy. How UK is coping with all those new structures, new ideas? You also mentioned already once postponed organization of following climate COP conference in Glasgow. It is now planned for November, but with all those new waves or differentiated waves of corona epidemic, what can we predict? What can we expect? How in UK people are adjusting themselves to those new realities?
Thanks very much. I think that, so first of all, in terms of the UK, we 2 years ago, we started a new industrial strategy, which will last until 2022. And the idea is to look at innovation and sustainability to kind of transform our productivity. And that will be ongoing. I think the British government, we're expecting tomorrow Prime Minister Johnson to make a speech about how he sees how the government is going to support our recovery. The announcement today was £1 billion for schools, redevelopment and investment in schools. I think we're going to see a series of infrastructure projects and a series of investments in soft skills for people to get ready for what lies ahead of us. In terms, just going back to the industrial strategy talked about ideas and the importance of encouraging innovation. It talked about the importance of preparing people for jobs for the future. Infrastructure I've mentioned already, but also to develop our business environment. And I know that's a parallel process that is going on definitely in Montenegro, I think probably in every country in the region as well. And that goes back to my point about the importance of reforms to ensure that every country is as competitive as they can possibly be. And then the fifth element of the industrial strategy is around growth and innovation at a community level and city level, where we're looking to make sure that all development doesn't happen at a national level, but it happens at the right level for municipalities, cities, local authorities to be taking ownership. Separate, the other strand of the industrial strategy is 4 grand challenges, where the UK has made the biggest ever increase in research and development investment in our country. £4.7 billion is being invested in artificial intelligence and big data, clean growth and the future of mobility, and meeting the needs of the aging population. So clean growth is one, future mobility is the third, and then meeting the needs of the aging population. And those are the areas where we think that we need the inputs from business, academia, and civil society, where people can have ideas, they pitch the ideas to government and government responds, or government can kind of go out and say, from our analysis, we know that these are the gaps in the market, please fill these gaps. We're going to be taking, you asked about the COP 2026, we're going to be taking a similar approach to COP 26. COP 26, as you know, any of you that have been involved in climate change, UN climate change conferences, there's a whole chunk that is around the negotiations. There is a whole chunk that's set around the ambition of where the world wants to get to as a result of these negotiations. And then each president has a set of campaigns that they work on. In terms of the level of ambition, we think that this, even when we thought we were hosting the conference this year, we thought that getting the world to up their level of ambition was tremendously important. We think it's even more important now that we have this additional 12 months until COP26. A number of countries, including Montenegro, are in the process of redefining their national defined contributions. We're very keen to work with Montenegro on that, we also think it's incredibly important that Montenegro has a long-term strategy, so that the NDCs flow from that strategy. Where do you want to be? Minister Damjanović has set out where Montenegro wants to be in terms of renewable energy, setting out the importance of science infrastructure. I think that's something that's absolutely key. In terms of the campaigns that we're looking at supporting globally, launching globally, there's going to be one on renewable energy, one on transport, one on adaptation, because, you know, so much of the work to date on climate change in individual countries has been about climate change mitigation. And adaptation is the other half of that picture, which is incredibly important. Resilience, nature-based solutions, and, you know, underpinning all of that, we're going to be really upping our game on terms of financing, because so many, as I mentioned earlier, countries' abilities to respond to these challenges will be based on their ability to access capital and access financing to make these transformations. So given that the UK is a financial hub, we're looking at kind of bringing that expertise, bringing our voice in multilateral international financial institutions to say, you know, for example, you want to build a new coal power plant, you're not going to be able to get the financing to do that. You're seeing that already from multilateral investors, you're seeing that from institutional investors. You know, where you're talking, I think now, certainly in Montenegro, there's a really interesting conversation about e-mobility. And if you're talking about an environment where the cost of electric vehicles is falling rapidly, they're expected to be cheaper than petrol cars over their lifetime by 2022 and cheaper upfront by 2025. So, you know, that's, if you think about by the end of this decade, most cars on the road are going to be electric cars. That's a tremendous transformation. How do we facilitate and grow that? Similarly, in the last decade, you've seen the cost of renewable energies drop. So the cost of solar has fallen by 87%, the cost of onshore has fallen by 62%, and the cost of offshore has fallen by 56%. You're seeing, as the minister said earlier, you're seeing the market respond in the way that Montenegro is growing and has had its first renewable projects secured without any feed-in tariffs. So these are areas which I'm really excited about, where I think there are tremendous opportunities for every country in the region. Obviously, I know a little bit more about Montenegro, but you all know much more about the countries in the region than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you actually already quantified some negative results and negative aspects, but from your talk, actually, I can see that the UK is keeping its course, and you are firmly sailing towards the realization of plans regarding the conference and regarding your strategies and activities in this innovation ecosystem.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we are going back again to the CERN, to the Minister Damjanović. Sanja, you mentioned about all your roles at CERN and the establishment of the Institute for Sustainable Technologies, and I think it's clear that we need some unifying measure here to bring all our synergies together and all our good values and good results made by our science and by our research community. We can't act on our own. We are too tiny in this globalized world. So having in mind all those realities and the also economic background, like Victor pointed out before, can you maybe share with us some challenges that you're facing, some obstacles maybe, how to overcome them?
Yes, so I just want to point out, if we want to be successful, we need to have people, we need to have young people, and Anna pointed this very nicely. And as you know, that one of the biggest economical loss of our region, meaning Southeast Europe, is the brain drain. So we have these resources, but we are permanently losing them. And that was the main trigger for this project, really to establish something big based on the newest technology to try to slow down brain drain. On top of that, I want also to emphasize something. I would be discouraged to go in that direction, and I feel very much doubts of the people, and I'll read the message. But we need to think about the past. Our region in the past had incredible tradition in technological development. I want to remind you that our region had 3 institutes international: Vinča in Serbia, Ruđer Bošković in Croatia in Zagreb, Josef Stefan in Ljubljana in Slovenia. At that time was former Yugoslavia. All 3 institutes were older than CERN. I want to give another example that the first research nuclear reactor started to operate in our region only 2 years later than the first research reactor started to operate in Germany. And not only that, Yugoslavia at that time was one of the founders of CERN. So we had this tradition and we need to recover it. And how you want to recover it? You need something big. You need research infrastructure. Let's think about Second War, when Europe lost all the best. If Europe would not build research infrastructure, let's talk about CERN, would never ever attract people back. And this is the main drive of this first project. And if we establish this first, we will be able to recover and establish more. But now we were thinking about how to go in that direction because we need to be competitive to the Europe. And that's why we were looking through the list. I say we, together with my colleagues from CERN, together with many European institutions, we look what is that on the map where we can be competitive. And that's why we come to this most modern way to treat the cancer. This is so-called new medical accelerator. And you know, at the beginning, there was doubts also from European Commission, doubts on us, can we do it? But then when they saw this pan-European dimension, that all people are together with us, not just because of us, because they want to build that also in their own countries, that was easy. Then we got immediately financial first support from European Commission. We enter into second phase. But then on our region, this project has another mission, which is science diplomacy. And this project is the third concrete example of science diplomacy. After CERN and Sesame, we have something. And I think what is the largest risk that this project will not get realized in our region is lack of political support in our region. Because I think we need to put ego aside. We need to think about this project as medical CERN. I know that everybody can feel free working at CERN, where you have 120 nations. They don't feel a project of Switzerland. They talk their own project. And I think we need to go in that line. There was a question whether we have capacity. You see, at CERN, we have 200 users from our country. If you bring something nice, attractive for work in your region, you will immediately also revert brain drain. So there is no problem, and we have already help from Atomic Energy Agency. We are already building capacity, but really all of us together, Europe together, our region together, should really follow and help us. And I want now to finish. In front of us is next challenge, and next challenge with deadline September is that we want to try to launch the project on S3 roadmap, European Strategic Forum Research Infrastructure. If we manage to be there, we show this pan-European value, we show added value for Europe, and we will assure EU funds. And my plea to everybody, don't doubt anything. Project is going well. We are in the best hands. Just help us to realize this research infrastructure.
Thank you so much. Actually, just to remind all our audience actually that you are at CERN and that the largest collider, they're actually behind the territory of both France and Switzerland. So it's a really good example how if we can't understand ourselves under the ground, maybe we should go a bit underground and try to solve at least research medical questions there. So some huge Sustainable Technologies Institute behind our Southeast Europe. But going back to Belgrade to Anna. Anna, unfortunately, we lost you just behind last couple slides you wanted to present with us. So I would now give you the floor just to conclude your presentation, maybe try to address these relations between the European Institute of Innovation and Technology and the forthcoming European Innovation Council and the relation toward Horizon Europe. And also I would pick just briefly some questions from the audience for you.
Thank you. Yes, I had the misfortune of being disconnected by the app in the middle of the presentation. I don't need to go back to the presentation because it will be available to everyone, and I have tried to render it very concrete with some links for people to get engaged. And that is my first message: please get engaged. Please learn more about different calls, whether you're a student or a company or a researcher, educator. And to respond to one of the questions that came to the audience about the role of companies, I would never take them out of the knowledge triangle. And that is another message, which is that whatever governments are supporting in the region, they should really reinforce this link between researchers and starting businesses or supporting businesses, investing in innovation, because we need more sophisticated technological innovation to bridge the development gap that we currently have. And to reach that, there are two missing elements that I feel in our culture that need to be strengthened. One is openness. And here I really salute Minister Damjanović for emphasizing that the project that Montenegro is supporting in cancer is not only looking to hire local talent, but international talent. And one should always be open about talent and trying to attract talent, no matter where it comes from, what color it has, what gender it has. And I would say the same about education. I feel that our education across the region is not sufficiently open, and we need to do more to really emphasize excellence and impact in our education and research. And in terms of green and sustainable innovation, that also has to do with awareness. And the awareness in our region, I also feel, is not sufficiently high in terms of the critical problem that lies at hand in terms of climate change. And the need for everyone to take an active role and to seek out solutions to participate in a positive response to this challenge. So all of that combined, make it an even bigger challenge for governments and all the supporting institutions. And it's wonderful to have the UK Embassy on board and other partners at EU. So. We have, people ask me often, and, have people in Berlin talked about the pending talks about, different political issues that we're all aware of in our region. And I tell them, no, they're actually, talking about climate change, and there are more pressing issues that people are discussing. And that has not come to the fore in our region because we have had continued, I wouldn't say political instability, but at least an insufficient rule of law. And we're still working on that higher topic and are not aware of a very pressing global issue in a sufficient way. So if you are looking to participate and you are a student, please try to look at these programs. If you're a company, do make sure that you are cooperating with researchers and educators and look at different accelerator programs offered by EIT. And Lale, since you also mentioned EIC, so European Innovation Council, although it sounds like it's an advisory body, in fact, it's a body that gives out significant funding and where you can apply as a single company, and that is a major innovation in Europe. You don't need this partnership with 3 countries and so forth. You can apply on your own to get a significant grant or to get an equity stake where you have more favorable conditions than if you were looking at private funding. So in this way, Europe is trying to defend its innovation, to give it more support so that not everybody goes to Palo Alto and moves there, which has been the case with some of the more significant innovations coming out of Europe. So that is the reason why this body has been created, and it definitely works hand in hand with EIT. And just to repeat once again at the end, all of these opportunities are absolutely available to everybody from the region of Western Balkans, and many should be, sufficiently brave, encouraged to apply, or at least look at these examples and try to get to a stage to be ready to apply by forming partnerships with the full knowledge triangle.
Many thanks for all those valuable conclusions, Anna. Actually, just to share with you that recently it was announced that European Innovation Council got submitted applications during this shutdown, which were behind the planned budget for all following 7 years of its future existence. Yes. And for this specific call, it was raised to additional 150 million euros, which is really excellent work, and it's really trying to.
Yes, and if you add to that the tremendous support that's been added by EU member states at this stage, in that sense, one can only see that the gap is increasing between that part of Europe and our part, which is absolutely, has significantly less funding. which is why we should really try to engage and take opportunities that are available to also this region that are at EU level.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, those funds are really open to all our countries together. But actually, let's try to act together. So not like independent companies, not like individual entities, but maybe like in the case of this Institute for Sustainable Technologies. And I'm also trying to address one of those questions. Actually, it's not planned to be only the Institute of the government of Montenegro and Montenegro PC. It is planned to integrate so many countries across this axis, maybe between Trieste on the west and Bucharest on the east, and maybe Budapest on the north, and Thessaloniki and Athens in Greece. So this is all our region. And now I believe it's time for a short conclusion. And although we mentioned so many really major policies and influential plans and institutions and large funding, I found one topic which all of you exactly address, and this is a brain drain. We are really losing people without stabilizing the situation and allowing opportunities for our younger generations, for those smart, not to leave for Palo Alto, like Justana said, but maybe trying to keep them here, to give them opportunities to maybe develop their own research careers, potentials, or maybe to be part of the growing innovation community, or maybe try to establish new kinds of opportunities, either through circular economy, either to this transfer of technology from research towards economy, even just to strengthen our educational basis. This is necessary in this time. It is necessary to well educate, to teach our community in order to address all those challenges which are rapidly emerging, and even to address all those smallest, tiniest particles, even those at CERN or those that are that produce this whole global collapse. So by saying those, I would really like to thank you for all those valuable comments and shared time. I know that some of you are either planning to go on vacation or somewhere in between. You invested significant time to share with us, and this is really a good message that Green Days finally united us all together in order to share best we can do, but never to forget our background and our realities at Southeast Europe. Radice?
Thank you, Mr. Erich, and a big thank you to all the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you too for your participation in the first day of the virtual conference Green Days 2020 online talks, Rethinking Development. See you all tomorrow when we'll be joined by more incredible speakers, have time for valuable networking, and listen to some progressive ideas.
Thank you all for joining us. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. You will be